Bang, 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 bang theory. It happened only once. He would also believe in the spontaneous generation of life. If it happened at all, it happened only once. It's not happening over and over again. He would also believe in macroevolution. If that happened, it happened only once. In fact, the entire history of the earth has only happened once. So to say that the evidence for the regular is always greater than that for the rare is not so. In fact, if Hume were consistent, he wouldn't believe in his own birth, because it only happened once physically. There's two realms of science. There's empirical science, where you can do something over and over again, and there's forensic science, where you've got evidence, and it's a situation where you can just look at the evidence and try and figure out what happened in the past based upon the resulting evidence. It's like a criminal investigation. Singularities happen all the time. And it's kind of odd for Hume to say that you ought not believe in a rare event if it really happened. Suppose it did happen, like the Big Bang. If it did happen, Hume says you ought not believe in it. There's some problem with that argument. Also, for miracles to get our attention, they by definition have to be rare. They can't be regular events. If they were regular events, we'd think they were part of the natural phenomenon. So they have to be rare to get our attention. So Hume's argument is about believability. It's not about actuality. Miracles can actually occur, and Hume is saying if they actually occur, you ought not believe in them. That's a bad argument. Also, he said, you can't say there was no prime mover. That's what Christopher said. And that's what I'm saying. You can't say there was no prime mover. In fact, I think there was a prime mover. In fact, later on he said, who made God? That's the big problem for theists. It's not a problem at all. Why? Because since something exists, we obviously exist, we're here, then something must have always existed, because you can't create yourself. There has to be an eternal, uncaused first cause. Now, we have two possibilities. Either the universe is eternal and doesn't need a cause, and atheists have believed that for many years. They believed in the steady state theory and thought the universe was eternal. They had no problem believing in an eternal universe. The second possibility is that there's something outside the universe that is eternal. Now, I've given evidence, I know very quickly, that the universe has not always been here. It's not eternal. The surge evidence. Second law, universe expanding, radiation afterglow, great galaxy seeds, Einstein. The universe is not eternal, so it must be something outside the universe that is. And that cause, it seems to me, must be spaceless, timeless, and immaterial. Why? Because you can't, if all space, all matter, and all time were created, the cause must be outside of space, matter, and time. This cause must also be extremely intelligent. Why? Because he created with extreme precision. He must also be personal. How can he be personal? Because you can't go from a state of non-existence to a state of existence without making a choice. An impersonal force has no ability to make choices. There couldn't have been like the Star Wars, use the Force, Luke, choice out there. The Force has no ability to make choices. Only a person can make choices. And once there was nothing physical, spatial, or temporal, and then suddenly an entire space-time continuum was created out of what rocks dream about, out of nothing. So someone made a choice. Christopher also said, we look for patterns. Yes, we do look for patterns, and the pattern I'm looking for is specified complexity that was in the first life and is in all life since then. When you see bennies go home on the beach, you don't assume the crabs did that. You don't assume it was made by natural law. You assume there was a mind behind it. He said religion came from or started with baby sacrifice. I know what religion's like. Well, many religions are false. I don't disagree. But to conflate all religions and put them all together and say, therefore, all religious viewpoints are false is not so. Christopher and I agree on 99% of religions out there that are false. I agree with them. I just think there's one that is true. I'm not saying that every religion, everything they teach is false. I'm saying there are certain things they teach that are false. So we don't disagree there. He said, I ought to stop giving evidence and just rely on faith. That would make a pretty stupid debate, wouldn't it? I just have faith it's true, and I'd sit down. Christianity does not say rely on faith. Christianity says always be ready to give an answer for the hope that you have. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind. Be ready to demolish arguments that are counter to God. It says test all things. Christians don't get brownie points for being stupid, despite the fact that the church has not lived up to this. We're supposed to give evidence. Secondly, there's a difference between belief that and belief in. Belief, I have to believe that the elevator has a floor in it before I get in it. Before I put my trust in it to hold me up. That's belief in, that I trust it's going to hold me up. But I have to have evidence that there's a floor there before I'm going to put my foot in there. In the same way, I have to have evidence that God exists before I'm going to put my trust in Him. And that's what I'm trying to do here. I don't know what the big spiel was about Mother Teresa. I don't know what that has to do with Christopher's worldview or how he's given any arguments for atheism. He hasn't given any arguments for his worldview yet. He's just complaining about what some religious people have done. Complaints about what some religious people have done does not do anything to whether or not Christianity is true. In fact, Christianity predicts we'll be hypocrites. That's why we need a Savior. I am a hypocrite. But that doesn't mean that Christianity is false. Christianity is based on a person, Jesus, who was perfect. I'm not. That's why He had to come. Christopher also said, how am I doing on time, sir?
4 minutes.
4 minutes, okay. I was going into a Jersey overspeed there. Christopher said, I know how religion starts. Maybe he does, but I think many times he confuses a personal anecdote with data. You don't just take a personal anecdote and say, this is how all religions start. How do you know that? He said, how could I know if God exists? It's called revelation, and everybody in here has revelation. There's two types of revelation. There's natural revelation and special revelation. Everybody in here and everybody out there knows there's a creator God from creation, because we know God by His effects, and also from conscience. Those two things show that there is a creator and a moral creator. The third revelation is through Christ and the Bible, in my view. Now, as I said, I haven't had enough time to go through all the data. I've got several chapters, and I don't have enough faith to be an atheist, trying to show why I think the New Testament documents are true. But that would be revelation. I don't see why, if I write Christopher a letter and I say, Christopher, this is what I'm thinking, like we did email trying to arrange this debate, he could figure out what my thoughts were. I can't see why God couldn't do the same thing. If He wants to write a book or a book of letters or whatever to try and tell us what He's about, He can do that. Not a problem. He said something about proof. I'm dealing with a probability argument here. Am I absolutely sure Christianity is true? No. I'm not absolutely sure. There's very few things you can be absolutely sure about. I'm trying to give a probability argument based on the evidence that there is a spaceless, timeless, immaterial, powerful, moral, personal, intelligent creator who ultimately revealed Himself in Jesus Christ about 2,000 years ago. Now, could I be wrong about that? Yes, I could. And during the Q&A, throw some stuff at us. That's fine. But Christopher seems to say that I just want you to convert to Christianity. Well, I'd love for you to do that, as if he's not trying to get you to convert to atheism. What do you think he's doing here at this debate? He wants to get you to agree with him. And for many good reasons in many cases. That maybe you ought to give up false religious beliefs. You ought to. I agree with Christopher on that. If they're false, give them up. But don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. A lot of times there may be things that you think are false that really aren't. Christopher finally talked about the issue of some design. This universe is heading toward oblivion. Look, the very fact that something may be degrading doesn't mean it wasn't designed in the first place. Your car is currently degrading right now, but that doesn't mean it wasn't designed. There's something in the universe known as the second law of thermodynamics, and it basically means we're all going to go to heat death. That's true. Now, you can't say that the designer was capricious because you don't know the intentions of the designer. The only way you can say that something wasn't designed optimally is if you know what the intentions of the designer were. How does he know what the intentions of the designer are? Maybe he wants the universe to go to oblivion so he can then create a new heavens and a new earth, which is exactly what Revelation 22 says. If you notice, Christopher has not given any real positive evidence for his worldview. He has not dealt with